Andrea Williams faced brutal humiliation and public ridicule from a group of teenagers at her local grocery store, all while neighbors watched in silence. Led by peer pressure and a thirst for attention, these boys turned everyday cruelty into viral entertainment that shocked and angered the community. But they didn't know Andrea's husband. Marcos, a calm, resolute former Navy SEAL, had a plan to restore dignity in ways no one expected. And just wait until you see how the tables are turned and why justice delivers an unforgettable, triumphant resolution to this powerful story. Andrea Williams woke before sunrise, the sky outside pale and waiting, her home wrapped in sleepy quiet. Her mornings always started gently, surrounded by the softness of her routine, a cup of tea brewed with careful precision, the low hum of local radio accompanying footsteps through the hallway. The world outside was ordinary, predictable, offering comfort Andrea cherished. She chose her favorite dress, a blue cotton wrap she wore on days she needed strength, and tied her hair up the way her mother taught her years ago. Before leaving, Andrea checked her grocery list twice and packed her purse, mindful that every detail of her day had meaning. She stepped outside into the cool air, passing neighborly houses, each familiar and safe, exchanging polite nods with Mrs. Green on the porch, and waving to Mr. Carter, tending his roses. These tiny exchanges grounded her, a reassurance that even in a world that sometimes felt unfriendly, there were moments of connection. The grocery store was busy that morning, its aisles bustling with children dodging shopping carts, tired parents rushing through lists, and cashiers moving in an endless routine. Andrea moved thoughtfully through the shelves, choosing ripe apples and fresh bread, adding her husband's favorite coffee to the basket. She lingered over the flower stand, selecting a single sunflower as a quiet gift to herself, a small reminder of resilience. After checkout, Andrea balanced her shopping bags, stepping back through the automatic doors into the bright parking lot. Wind tugged at her dress, the sun already warming the pavement. As she walked toward her car, she noticed a group of teenagers gathered near a bench. They seemed intent on their own world, animated, loud. She paid them little attention, focusing on her path and the weight of her groceries. But their voices followed her, quick, sharp laughter that felt out of place in the morning calm. Words drifted through the air, remarks tossed carelessly, comments about her size, about the way she moved, about the way people noticed or didn't notice her. The tone was mocking, made not for her but for themselves, a ritual of bravado and belonging. Andrea's heart tightened. She lowered her eyes, willing herself to be invisible. One of the boys, emboldened by his friends, stepped closer. His voice was louder, teasing. Andrea felt her grip on the bags tighten, her pulse thudding in her ears as the group's laughter grew. She tried to accelerate her pace, eager to reach the safety of her car, but the boys moved in front of her, blocking her way. There was a brief moment where Andrea locked eyes with a passerby, a woman she'd seen before at the store. The woman hesitated, then looked away, leaving Andrea stranded. Suddenly a shout rang out, and another boy knocked one of her grocery bags out of her hand. Apples rolled across the concrete, a carton of milk burst open, and the laughter crescendoed. Andrea froze, mortified, struggling to react. Emotions crashed through her, shock, confusion, and acute embarrassment. She knelt to retrieve her things, her hands shaking so badly she dropped an apple 3 times before managing to lift it. All around the world seemed to hold its breath, witnesses unwilling to interfere. The pain cut deeper for the absence of defense. In that moment, she was utterly alone. One of the boys filmed her with his phone, narrating the scene as if it were entertainment for strangers. Andrea could hear snippets of his commentary words she knew would soon be shared beyond the parking lot, multiplying the hurt in unseen ways. Her cheeks burned, not just from humiliation, but from the sense of powerlessness that drowned out any hope for protection. She finished gathering her scattered groceries and stood, aware that tears threatened. Andrea forced herself upright, her posture steady even as her spirit faltered. She turned her back on the jeering group and walked away, each step heavy under the strain of public cruelty. She passed people who pretended not to see, people she knew by name, who fell silent in the presence of discomfort. Every one of them became part of the pain, a chorus of indifference, louder than the bully's laughter. Reaching her car, Andrea set the bags on the passenger seat, closed the door, and sat for a moment before driving away. The storm of emotions inside her built upon itself. Anger at the injustice, grief for her lost dignity, longing for a world in which kindness prevailed. For the rest of the day, the echoes of the encounter stayed with her, coloring every thought and memory, transforming the safe routine of her morning into something unrecognizable. Andrea's journey home was slow, every red light a reminder of what had happened. In the quiet of her living room, surrounded by the familiar, she pressed a damp cloth to her eyes, trying to erase the memory of laughter, and to gather the strength she knew she would need for what came next. Marcus Williams returned home from his shift at the local community center, the evening sunlight cutting gentle shapes across the living room walls. He immediately sensed something was wrong. Andrea sat quietly at the edge of their couch, her eyes distant and her posture guarded. The grocery bags were packed less carefully than usual, a damp stain from a broken carton still visible near the kitchen sink. He set down his backpack and sat beside her without speaking. Andrea held her hands in her lap, fingers entwined tightly, as she tried to recount the morning's events. Her words came slowly, fragmented by pauses, as she described the mocking group at the store, the laughter, the moment her groceries tumbled to the ground. Marcus listened in silence, his own emotions clashing beneath a steady exterior. Andrea wasn't the kind of person to complain. She always strived to see the good in people, even when days were hard. But as she described the crowd that watched quietly, the group filming her distress for their own amusement, Marcus could see the impact running deeper than a simple embarrassment. Andrea's hurt wasn't only physical, it was rooted in the feeling of being exposed, judged, and abandoned by those around her. Marcus moved closer, covering her hand with his. He wanted to offer comfort, but understood some wounds couldn't be mended so easily. As Andrea finished, he realized how little consolation words could bring. Instead, he promised silently to listen and to act. Later that night, Marcus sat at his computer, searching for traces of the incident. Within minutes, he found a video uploaded to a social media page, the title mocking, and the comments thread filled with callous humor and shame. Every frame reflected the cruelty Andrea endured, making Marcus's resolve grow sharper. He copied the link, unsure at first what to do, but determined to ensure those responsible would face consequences. In the hours that followed, Andrea attempted to return to normalcy, making tea, tidying the kitchen, and reading stories to herself in the quiet of the living room. Yet each time she caught herself sinking back into pain, Marcus was there, silent but watchful, offering small gestures of support, a gentle squeeze of her shoulder, an extra effort to create a sense of peace. Andrea tried to sleep, but the echoes of the day haunted her. Marcus stayed awake long after she closed her eyes, searching for answers. He remembered his own training, his years serving in challenging conditions where being vigilant and decisive mattered above all else. But now the battlefield was different, and the enemy wore the face of everyday indifference. Through the night, Marcus planned carefully. His instincts told him not to rush or act out of anger, but to look for a solution that would bring real change and restore dignity to Andrea. In their home, filled with quietly shared grief and determination, hope for justice began to form, not only for Andrea, but for anyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of cruelty. Marcus woke early the next morning, his mind clear and focused. The ache he felt for Andrea had shaped itself into determination, a quiet but resolute drive to set things right. For many years, the discipline of his past life had taught him patience, observation, and the importance of subtle action. Now he relied on those instincts. The streets of their town were calm at sunrise, but Marcus sensed a tension under the surface, a challenge waiting for justice. He spent the morning preparing carefully. Marcus studied the social media profiles connected to the video, noting the identities of the teenagers in the crowd. He reviewed footage multiple times, examining not only their faces but their behavior, the way they moved, spoke, and laughed together. This wasn't just impulsive cruelty. He saw the patterns of peer pressure, bravado, and a desperate need for attention. Marcus considered how easily cruelty becomes routine when no one stands in opposition. After breakfast, Andrea watched Marcus with wary hope. She asked softly if he planned to speak to the authorities, but he explained that some solutions needed to begin closer to home. Marcus reminded her that, just as he had helped strangers overseas, now it was his turn to help his own community. Andrea nodded, her eyes reflecting both fear and trust. By midday, Marcus parked his car near the same grocery store. He blended in with the morning crowd, calm and unremarkable. The group of teenagers soon arrived, their voices echoing as they gathered around the entrance. Marcus kept his distance at first, watching as they teased another passerby, a young woman, hesitant and alone, distracted by her errands. The boys laughed and filmed, repeating the same cycle that had hurt Andrea, believing they were untouchable in their small world. Shoppers moved quickly, avoiding conflict, pretending not to notice. As the tension grew, Marcus moved closer. The boys recognized him from the previous day's video, but did not connect him to Andrea. His presence was steady, his gaze unwavering. Without confrontation, Marcus began talking to the bystanders. He asked gentle questions that sparked discomfort. Did anyone feel it was right to stand silent? Did anyone believe a person should be treated this way? Some looked away, embarrassed. Others murmured agreement, suddenly questioning their own role. Marcus calmly approached the teenagers. His voice was firm but respectful. He introduced himself, explained why their actions mattered, and described the pain Andrea felt. The group bristled, some growing defensive, others quieter. Marcus spoke not of vengeance but of accountability, the effects their choices had beyond laughter and fleeting approval. One boy, embarrassed by attention, tried to justify his actions. Marcus listened, then described what it meant to take responsibility, sharing stories from his time in service, where a single moment of courage meant everything. He encouraged them to consider the legacy they left in their community, whether they wanted to be remembered for kindness or for pain. A crowd began to gather, quietly at first, drawn by Marcus's calm strength. He offered the boys a chance to apologize directly to Andrea and suggested they volunteer at the community center for a week, helping others to understand the real impact of support, respect, and the power of changing one's actions. Unable to dismiss his presence or underestimate his resolve, the boys reluctantly agreed, witnessing the influence of steady conviction. Word traveled quickly. By the afternoon, parents called Marcus to thank him for taking a stand, and staff at the grocery store requested more help in creating a safer environment. Andrea received messages of encouragement from neighbors who watched the scene unfold, many admitting they wished they'd spoken up before. In the days that followed, Marcus led the group in volunteer work, serving meals, cleaning parks, and helping elderly residents. Andrea visited with Marcus during these projects, uncertain at first but gradually comforted by the changes she saw. During moments of conversation and shared effort, the teenagers began to shift, not instantly, but with growing awareness of the damage careless words could do. Andrea's confidence was slow to return, but each day she felt less invisible, supported by new allies among the neighbors and students she once feared. Marcus's actions planted seeds of respect throughout the community, showing everyone, victims and witnesses alike, that real justice could be built not just from confrontation, but from steady persistence and the courage to change. The world Andrea saw each morning was not perfect, but now it carried the hope she had longed for, a readiness to stand up for what was right, and the knowledge her pain would not be ignored. As the days gently slipped into weeks, Andrea's world slowly expanded with new texture and color. The incident at the grocery store did not leave her unchanged, but it also did not define her as it had threatened to. Instead, something intricate grew from the pain, a tapestry of community, compassion, and self-discovery, stitched together by countless small choices from both her and those around her. Each morning, Andrea rose just before sunrise, drawn by a sense of anticipation. Where once she had braced herself against the world, she now found herself searching for new reasons to step outside. The garden Marcus tended flourished, the air fragrant with the green and golden scent of sunflowers, basil, and tomatoes ripening beneath the kitchen window. Andrea often joined Marcus in the yard, their conversations quiet, sometimes consisting only of laughter or companionable silence. In these hours she rediscovered her love for nature, the steady grounding of her hands in the soil, the patient reward as young vines stretched toward the light. The teens who, only recently, brought so much grief to her life, gradually came to see Andrea and Marcus as more than strangers or easy targets. It began with awkward apologies, guided by Marcus's insistence on honesty. At first the boys came reluctantly to the community center, where they passed out meals to families in need and picked up litter at local parks. Andrea watched these hesitant gestures from a distance, cautious but hopeful. Over time, some of the boys approached her directly, asking about gardening, books, or for help organizing an event for younger children. They no longer avoided her gaze or lowered their voices. There was, instead, a new effort to communicate with respect, sometimes tinged with nervousness and sometimes with admiration. Andrea's world felt larger with every connection. At the grocery store, casual conversations became routine. The cashier remembered her favorite brands, and neighbors lingered after shopping to share news or offer help. Once stony silences were replaced with soft greetings and invitations to church suppers, community meetings, to laughter shared just outside the store's bright sliding doors. The transformation was slow, with setbacks and awkward moments, but it was genuine and persistent. For Andrea, these gestures formed a safety net that caught her on difficult days and lifted her on better ones. One afternoon, Andrea was asked to share her experience at a local high school assembly. The gym was filled with restless students, their curiosity piqued by rumors and social media fragments. Andrea stepped up to the podium, heart beating with nerves, her story unfolding with simplicity and candor. She described not only the pain of that day, but also the strength she found in her husband's kindness and the possibility of change if people choose courage over cruelty. She addressed those who had witnessed the incident, acknowledging that silence, too, carries weight, and invited everyone to imagine how their smallest choices could either wound or mend. The reaction was profound. Teachers and students approached her afterward, some apologizing for their own inaction, others expressing gratitude for her honesty. Andrea's words rippled across the school and into neighboring communities, sparking conversations about respect, empathy, and inclusion. Outside the school, the reporters returned for a follow-up story, not to capture scandal, but to chronicle how a single act of humility and resilience could unleash transformation. Marcus, ever humble, declined to be interviewed at length, simply affirming that pride was found not in dramatic gestures, but in being steadfast and kind, even when it was difficult. The story found its way onto local radio and television. Andrea's neighbors began to meet regularly in the park, holding open forums and family picnics where everyone was encouraged to share ideas for improving their neighborhood. Marcus offered practical advice on community safety, drawing from his years of experience, and Andrea launched a neighborhood reading circle, bringing together children and adults to find comfort and inspiration in stories. Evenings became a time for slow walks beneath the warmth of the setting sun. Andrea and Marcus would stroll through streets once shadowed by fear, now vibrant with new murals, artwork created by the teens and neighbors together. Birds darted through the lavender dusk, and the laughter of families nearby made the air feel as soft as the petals in Andrea's garden. Through these shared rituals, wounds gradually healed. Community leaders took action, not only posting signs about respect, but also hosting training for staff and volunteers to help prevent future harm. The teens developed their own initiatives, raising awareness about cyberbullying and standing up for others who might not have the strength to defend themselves. Andrea's confidence blossomed alongside her friendships. She volunteered to visit elderly community members with fresh produce from her garden, her once shy conversations opening into heartfelt discussions about perseverance, forgiveness, and the beauty of small resilience. Marcus's pride in her was evident, though he expressed it quietly, a knowing smile, a gentle hand resting on Andrea's shoulder during hard moments, a subtle nod during community gatherings that spoke volumes about the power of steadfast love. As summer faded, Andrea reflected on the journey she had taken with her husband and her community. The painful encounters had transformed into stories of triumph, not because they were erased, but because they were acknowledged, faced, and met with courage and hope. Children waved as Andrea passed, calling her name, and the teens who had once mocked her now volunteered side by side, becoming role models themselves. On a calm night, beneath the first flickers of fireflies, Andrea found herself once again on the porch, her hand in Marcus's. Their world felt both vast and intimate, a place rebuilt not by erasing the painful chapters, but by writing new, radiant ones over them. She looked at Marcus and saw not only a protector, but a true partner in healing and change. Together, in the gentle hush of twilight, they understood. The most extraordinary victories are not won in moments of fury, but crafted steadily, lovingly, and patiently, one connection, one act, one heart at a time.